And many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. President Macky Sall's meeting with Jomai Faye and Sonko to lower tension for the incoming government, says an expert.
That's my reading of the situation, but also to show to the rest of the nation that because it's about Senegal, people will forget, people will forgive because he has the future of Senegal in hand.
Two umbrella legal professional bodies in Mali petitioned the Constitutional Council over the delayed transition to civilian rule. The United States announces an exit plan as it acknowledges the cancellation of military cooperation agreement with Niger. And the Burkina Faso transitional government adopts a new decree extending the general mobilization amid concerns about forced disappearances. Stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, and Liberia. Let's begin in Senegal with the observance of the long-standing presidential tradition that brings together the outgoing head of state and his successor shortly before the handing over ceremony. This practice had President Macky Sall on Thursday welcome President-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye at the presidential palace days before April 2nd. Viral pictures of the meeting also captured opposition politician Ousmane Sonko, who accompanied Diomaye on the epic occasion. Political and governance experts have hailed the dialogue, hoping it unites the country in the face of political adversity. Taufik Abdel Nasser tells us more.
Outgoing President Macky Sall on Thursday welcomed his successor Bassirou Diomaye Faye, while the Constitutional Council is expected to make the final pronouncement. Securing over 54% plus votes, Diomaye Faye becomes the next president following the legitimization of the election results by the Court of Appeal. The former tax inspector and his party leader, Ousmane Sonko, arrived at the palace where they were welcomed by Sall. Although a tradition, Ibrahim Khan, an AU governance expert, says the meeting is a catalyst to ending the apparent political divide and promote social cohesion.
For me, my reading is trying to reconciliate, Macky Sall and Sonko. Now that Sonko is no longer candidate for the presidency and Macky Sall is leaving. Trying just to show that, yes, we fought other politicians, but now it's time of peace, it's time of thinking of Senegal. So he brought with him, because there was no other opportunity for him to bring Sonko to talk to Macky Sall. That's my reading of the situation, but also to show to the rest of the nation that because it's about Senegal, people will forget, people will forgive because he has the future of Senegal in hand.
Details of the meeting are not yet public, but Khan suggests that important files and issues confronting the country, logistical details of the oath taken and handover ceremony were part of the discussions. On Wednesday, the outgoing head of state asked his government to take all the necessary measures to ensure the preparation of the transfer of power files.
Taufik Abdel Nasser reporting there. Meanwhile, subjects of interest and areas of concern for the Senegalese incoming government continue to dominate discussions. Again, Ibrahim Khan, a governance expert, comments.
Talking about the Senegal debt, it's 70% of the GDP of Senegal. That's a big concern. For a country that wants to talk about sovereignty, that country wants to sort out the economic problem of the country. That's one of the biggest issues at the moment in Senegal. How do you deal with that situation given that even the oil and gas has not yet been exploited? That's one of the issues. And you have many other problems. I think the current situation in ECOWAS is a concern for both Macky Sall and Diomaye Faye, because knowing that Diomaye and Sonko have good relationship with the three leaders that are trying to leave the institution, I think that can be part of the conversation. And also, the situation of all the different institutions in Senegal, how are the security situation. At the moment we are talking, it seems to be serious problem at the border between Senegal and the Gambia in the other part of the country. All those needs to be known by the new president so he can start thinking of what can be done, what cannot be done, sort out those problems.
Away from Senegal to Mali, magistrates have appealed to the Constitutional Council to rule on the end of transition, which officially ended on March 26, 2024. The military promised to conduct elections on this date in order to restore constitutional rule in the country. The petition is one of many to follow previous complaints about after the military authorities in September last year postponed the elections indefinitely. Imo Edet has the rest of the details in the following report.
Yesterday, Thursday, the Reference Union of Magistrates and the Malian Association of Prosecutors lodged an application with the Constitutional Court. These two professional organizations are members of the opposition coalition called the Appeal of February 20, which is calling for an end to the transition. In their document, they asked the court to rule on the end of the transition, but above all to recognize that the current authorities have no mandate or power to represent Mali. In their view, the Constitutional Court should call for the opening of a new transition, which should include all the components of the nation, including the Republican Army. The main task of the so-called civilian transition will then be to organize elections to restore constitutional order. In the application, the judges and prosecutors represented by these two organizations cite the need to preserve democratic gains and also call for an end to attacks on public freedoms. This referral to the Constitutional Court comes at a time when concerns have been raised in Bamako in recent weeks, calling for an end to the transition. In a recent statement, Malian Prime Minister Choguel Kokala Maiga declared that the government was working to organize credible and transparent elections. He called for unity and calm.
Imo Edet reporting.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on WADR.org and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's take you to Nigeria, where the United States will soon be withdrawing its troops stationed in the country. The withdrawal plan was part of America's response regarding the cancellation of the military cooperation agreement between Niamey and Washington by General Abdurrahman Chani's government last week. These military cooperation agreements were signed in July 2012 under the regime of former President Mahamadou Issoufou. More details with Oge Berika.
Washington, D.C. has informed of the end of military agreements between the United States and Niger following a recent meeting of authorities in Niamey that have shaken relations between the two nations. The ruling military last week denounced the military cooperation agreement with the United States, which had a strategic drone base in the country. The U.S. reacted by announcing the preparation of a project to discuss the withdrawal of its forces deployed in the Sahelian country. The U.S. Ambassador Caitlin Fitzgibbon confirmed this decision during a meeting with General Mohamed Tumba, Niger's Minister of the Interior. However, America remains committed to supporting the country's development through initiatives such as U.S. aid. On 16 March this year, Niger terminated the agreement relating to the status of U.S. military personnel and civilian employees of the Department of Defense, describing the text as unfair and imposed unilaterally by Washington via a simple note. This military cooperation agreement was signed in July 2012 under the government of former President Mahamadou Issoufou to strengthen the capacities of the Nigerian armed forces to combat terrorism. More than 1,000 American soldiers, mainly from the U.S. Air Force, were initially based at Niamey Air Base 101 in response to a request from the Nigerian authorities, who were concerned about the threat of the Islamic State organization from neighboring Libya.
Ogebirika filed that report. The Burkinabe government has adopted a new decree extending the duration of the general mobilization and warning by 1 year. Adopted at the Council of Ministers this week, the decree takes effect from April 19, 2024. The information is now public knowledge just when several civil society and human rights organizations are accusing the regime of forced disappearances of people critical of the government. Let's join David Vincent for more details.
The new decree adopted at the Council of Ministers extends the duration of the general mobilization and warning by 12 months as the current decree expires next month. Activated last year by the transitional government of Captain Ibrahim Traore, the General Mobilization Decree seeks to coordinate and improve the fight against terrorism across the country. Defending the extension, Traore's administration says the new decree will consolidate the gains recorded thus far in the anti-jihadist campaign. According to the state, this legal provision aims to continue the mobilization of resources, restore security, and ensure the protection of populations and their property against extremists. As a reminder, the decree allows the military to draft anyone for immediate deployment to the battlefield to support the army fighting against insurgents. Several human rights organizations denounced this measure. They say it was designed to silence dissenting voices. Since April 2023, the authorities have sent several citizens, including journalists, politicians, civil rights activists, legal practitioners, among others, to the front line in the fight against armed terrorist groups.
David Vincent with that report. Away from the Sahel, the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, has failed to comply with the directive to produce a load shedding timing as Ghanaians continue to reel under the impact of the power crisis. One of the hardest impacts yet of the unstable power situation is the death of a 3-day-old baby that has been linked to the power outage at the neonatal intensive care unit of the Tema General Hospital. From Accra, WADR's Nadiri Tete reports.
Ghanaians have endured inconsistent power supply and frequent outages for the past several weeks with no immediate solution in sight. A mother whose 3-day-old baby passed away has attributed the tragedy to a power outage at the neonatal intensive care unit of the Tema General Hospital.
We were there when the doctor arrived. When he arrived, he went to look at the baby. When he was done, he called us into a room and spoke at length. Kept going on and on, so I prompted her to be direct and tell us what the problem was. Then the doctor said the baby had passed.
Responding to the alarming situation, the Ghana Medical Association has highlighted the adverse effects of these outages on hospital operations. Here, it is General Secretary Dr. Richard Selome.
Equipment need power, and critical equipment, for example, ventilators, even laboratory equipment, require power to function. Beyond this are those patients who may be on the theater table, who may be undergoing dialysis, who may be undergoing various forms of treatment that require power to power machines and equipment that serve these patients. And so it is very important that we put the issue into context. It's not about when only somebody dies, but people may even suffer irreparable damage just because the power has been off.
The association has also added to the calls for the implementation of a load shedding timetable to manage the situation effectively.
For critical installations as hospitals, they need to know the timing of these outages, especially where we know that they are being done at certain times, and so that they can plan.
The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PRC, which had issued a March 27th ultimatum to the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, to provide a load shedding timetable, has not yet received an explanation from ECG regarding its failure to comply with the directive. Dr. Eric Obute is the Director of Research and Corporate Affairs at the PRC.
As of now, ECG has not given us any reasons as to why they are not able to comply with that particular order.
For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. President Macky Sall's meeting with Diomaye Faye and Sonko to lower tension for the incoming government, says an expert. Two umbrella legal professional bodies in Mali petitioned the Constitutional Council over the delayed transition to civilian rule. The United States announces an exit plan as it acknowledges the cancellation of military cooperation with Niger. The Burkinabe transitional government adopts a new decree extending general mobilization amid concerns about forced disappearances. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and a sports update. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for staying with us. The government of Liberia expects growth in the nation's gross domestic product (GDP) by 5.3% following the restructuring and realignment of the 2024 draft national budget. The government believes the draft budget, which is currently before the legislature for scrutiny when approved, will jumpstart the new administration's agenda. Our Moravia correspondent, Dalton Popper, has more.
According to Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs Anthony Myers, the country's GDP has declined over time due to global economic variables. However, he mentioned that the prospects for GDP growth in the coming years are positive.
In 2024, it's projected a 5.3% growth in GDP. And then 2025 and 2026, going to 2027, an average of 6.4% growth.
Deputy Finance Minister for Budget and Development Planning, Tenel Bronson, highlighted the key variables for recurrent expenditure in the draft national budget, focusing on compensation for employees, payment of debts, among other priorities.
There were some tough decisions that we faced in the preparation of the 2024 budget, all in the interest of the Liberian populace. These included reductions in critical cost drivers in the budget and redirecting them towards needed sectors in line with the President's vision.
Former Finance Minister Amara Kone, who also serves as a senator, criticized the draft budget submitted to the legislature as unrealistic.
I'm concerned about the president's budget because the president's foreign travel is $178,000. Look at the budget. What is the message there? The president is not going to go to the UNGA to represent us in that body. The president is not going to go to AU conference. The vice president travel budget is, I think, 90 or 100K. His domestic travel budget is $10,000 for the vice president. Is that possible in a whole year?
The president has recalled the legislature from their legislative leave to review the draft instrument and ensure its passage. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
For more on financial news, the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) has announced revised minimum capital requirement for banks, setting the minimum capital base for commercial banks with international authorization at 500 billion naira or $1.23 billion. In a communication addressed to all commercial, merchant, and non-interest banks as well as promoters of proposed banks, the Director of the Financial Policy and Regulation Department, Haruna Mustafa, emphasized that banks must meet these requirements within 24 months. As our Abuja correspondent Usman Umar reports, the countdown begins April 1, 2024 and ends on March 31, 2026.
Central Bank of Nigeria spokesperson Hakama Sidi Ali confirmed this development in Abuja on Thursday. Under the new guidelines, commercial banks with national authorization must maintain a minimum capital base of 200 billion naira, approximately 492 million United States dollars, while those with regional authorization are required to have a minimum of 50 billion naira, around 123 million United States dollars. Merchant banks are now mandated to maintain a minimum capital of 50 billion naira, approximately 123 million USD, while non-interest banks with the national and regional authorization must have minimum capital bases of 20 billion naira, around 49 million USD, and 10 billion naira, approximately 24.5 million USD, respectively. This announcement follows CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso's recent call for deposit money banks to expedite their recapitalization efforts to fortify the financial system. Last November, Governor Cardoso, who assumed office 2 months earlier, highlighted that commercial banks in Nigeria would be required to increase their capital base to support the $1 trillion economy ambition of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. The last adjustment to capital requirements for banks in Nigeria occurred in 2005 during the tenure of Charles Soludo as Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, when the capital base was raised from 2 billion naira to 25 billion naira. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Omar reporting from Abuja.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Morgan Asogba, a regional security expert, joins us with analysis of the United States exit plan from Niger following the junta's cancellation of military cooperation agreements with over 1,000 troops and a drone base in Niger America's departure from the Sahelan country battling insurgency may create yet another vacuum in the security sector after France's expulsion last year. Asogba's reaction first captures the impacts of the pullout.
Well, obviously, it's going to have an impact because the United States of America have a logistic that is very useful to the fight against terrorism within the Sahel, and especially in Niger. We are talking about very interesting and relevant equipment that has been provided in intel, not only for that fight, but also quite strategic for the U.S. in terms of gathering of relevant information for the American interest within the West African region, because it's not just about Niger. And maybe the capability of these military bases go above West Africa. So it's very strategic for the United States, and it's going to change a lot, not only within the fight against terrorists, but also in terms of foreign policy, or let's say in terms of intel for the American system of information. So this is a serious situation, and there is a vacuum that will be created, be it for the United States or for Niger and the whole Sahel.
There are experts like yourself that have said Niger's move to cancel this military agreement was because it was leaning more towards Russia. And the question will be, how can Russia help Niger do what U.S. has been doing in terms of security, and what better strategy or method are they going to employ?
And when we talk about Russia's partners in West Africa, we look at Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and we've seen that the cooperation is moving a step ahead. And that step ahead could be what is in store. Maybe Russia will give some key operation opportunities that are particularly needed for Niger and most of the Sahel states that are being led by military have voiced out their intention to cooperate with states on a different, let's say, basis. They don't want states that will be in their shores, but they want states that will provide them with the knowledge, the technology, and the logistics. And I believe so far, Russia has been that type of state. When we look at Russian foreign policy and we compare it to American foreign policy or French foreign policy within the West Africa and the Sahel, we realize that Russia has always vowed for not moving in, not showing military bases. But when you look at the U.S. and you look at France, they've been handling military bases on site and in terms of collaboration with their various partners.
And talk about America's exit plan. Which country do you see them relocate their base to?
You can see that Ivory Coast remains a key partner. As much as Ivory Coast is a key partner for France, Ivory Coast also seems to be a key partner for the U.S. See that Nigeria gets some attention from the U.S. as well, as much as from France. So if the U.S. has to make a choice, a strategic choice, I think these two countries will be some of the countries that the U.S. will be looking at, because most of the countries within the Sahel and those that are really facing the issue of terrorism are deciding to go with Russia rather than any other Western partner.
That was Morgan Asogba, a Newslink contributor and regional security expert. It's now time for sports update with Sankle Janko.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. The Confederation of African Football (CAF) has announced dates for finals of the Total Energies CAF Champions League and Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup 2023-24 season. The finals will be played on home and away basis in May 2024. The first leg of the CAF Confederation Cup will be played on Sunday, 12 May 2024. The second leg of the same fixture will be played the following weekend, Sunday, 19 May 2024, according to CAF official website. The Total Energies CAF Champions League finals first leg will be played on Saturday, 18 May 2024, while the second leg will be played on Saturday, 25 May 2024. Meanwhile, the premier competitions, that is the CAF Champions League and Confederation Cup quarterfinals fixtures, will return this weekend, beginning today, Friday, 29 March 2024. Ivorian sides, Asigme Mosmas will take on Esperance the Sportif de Tunis in the first round of the quarterfinals of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Meanwhile, in the Confederation Cup, Nigeria's Rivers United will take on defending champions USM Algiers. In the quarterfinals, Ghana's Dreams FC will be away to Mali's Stade Malien in an all-West African affair for the Confederation Cup this weekend. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Sports was brought to you by Sankule Janko. And that's how we end this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Maojo Juve for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, now WADR English Service. We also stream live on WADR.org. I am Abdullah Hassan. Coming up at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. is the second edition of the News in French, Info Chez Vous, with Demba Amar Ann. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening.